gonna do it. I'll do something. I'll do something else. I got something I want to read. If that's okay.
Lord have mercy. Hour number 2 of the 3-hour show. Lord have mercy. The first hour was hot as hell. Forgive me, Paul Hill, for cussing. I know you're a minister. But that's how hot it was. But we're starting the second hour with number 1 all over the world. Streaming live on the radio, so many years. So right now, in the studio with me, I got a person that I have been admiring for years. I'm talking about no other than the great Paul Hill. And speaking of politics, I regret one thing about East Cleveland. I'm an East Cleveland resident, and so is Paul for years. And I regret one thing, and that is that Paul Hill did never become mayor of East Cleveland. Man, I remember years ago he went one time. I said, Paul, you got to go back again. But he never went back again. But I know that if Paul Hill had became mayor of East Cleveland, man, that must have been about 20 years ago he ran. East Cleveland would be a vibrant, beautiful city right now. Paul Hill had won. But that's a whole different story. I'm not here to talk politics. It just dawned on me about since the elections are coming up. But in the studio is Paul Hill, the great one, Paul Hill, and he wants to talk about a lot of things. He wants to share a lot about Don Freeman. And listen, I'm not even going to try to give Paul Hill no resume and all that. That would take up the whole hour of the show. So we're not even going to go into that mushy stuff. We're going to get right into no other than one thing I want to know, Paul Hill. How you get to be Paul Hill Jr.?
Well, Paul Hill Sr. and his 4 brothers.
Pull that right up to you a little bit.
Paul Hill Sr. and his 4 brothers and 1 sister. They were from Pittsview, Alabama, and they were brought up in Birmingham, Alabama. And they left the South because of all the repression and oppression and that was taking place, and relocated to Cleveland, Ohio as teenagers. And once they relocated to Cleveland, and my father ended up working for National Bronze back during the early 40s and becoming a union steward, he ended up meeting a gentleman named John O'Holly.
John O'Holly.
Yeah, John O'Holly. We should all be familiar with him because John O'Holly, that's the name of the main post office on Orange Avenue that Louis Stokes named after John O'Holly, because John O'Holly was a mentor for Louis and Carl Stokes. Who was John O'Holly, and why is he important, and why am I bringing him up relative to the question about my father? Because my father became part of an organization that John O'Holly started back during the late 30s. John O'Holly was born in 1901 and passed away in 1974, and he was born in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and moved to Cleveland during the 1920s. And he was a visionary black labor and community organizer. And he is known for founding the Future Outlook League in Cleveland in 1935. And once my father moved to Cleveland and worked for a while and dealt with some of the discrimination on the job, he became a member of the Future Outlook League. But before becoming a member, my uncle Albert Porter, and his sister Leila Porter, they ended up becoming founding members of the Future Outlook League. Now, the Future Outlook League was the first grassroots civil rights organization in Cleveland, predating the NAACP's major campaigns of the 1940s and 1950s. John O'Holly and the Future Outlook League emphasized their motto was "Don't buy where you can't work" campaigns, using picketing, boycotts, and direct economic pressure to force white-owned businesses to hire black people. So my father became a a member of that organization along with his cousins. And I remember as a child, I had to be, my brother Ron and I had to be 6, 7, 8 years old going to those meetings on 55th and Woodland. There used to be a central market there, and the Future Outlook League was right above that central market on Woodland. And I remember these strong black men and women getting together and strategizing, and women had equal rights and input just like the males did. And this was before that time. And they ended up coming up with boycotts. They ended up boycotting what was called Woolworths, which was a drugstore, because we would spend our money there, but they wouldn't hire black folks. And I remember being on that picket line, my brother and I, that was our first baptism or rites of passage with these strong black men and women. But my father was part of that organization, and he was brought up in public housing in the central area with Carl Stokes and Louis Stokes. They all went to Central High School together. The central area at that time was the only place that black people could move when they migrated, from the South. The central area was a thriving area of black folks, but still they had to deal with discrimination as it related to hiring practices. So the Future Outlook League, my father was very much involved in, civil rights and labor rights, during that period of time. So a lot of what he was involved in, was rites of passage of baptism for myself and my brother Ron. But again, that's who I'm named after, Paul Hill Sr. He ended up getting a job after, a number of years with the Bureau of Motor Vehicles. And I know Charlie Bibb talks about him, because Charlie Bibb said that my father was very instrumental in his development, very instrumental in Charlie Bibb's development. He was a good friend, of my father. But my father ended up rising up, within that organization, Future Outlook League, as well as the Bureau of Motor Vehicles, becoming a supervisor. So he passed away at 75 years of age, but who I am is because of my father, my mother, my uncle, and all his brothers. The importance of family and his obligations relative to community, much that is received, much has to be given back. So that's who Paul Hill, just a short, abbreviated version of who I'm named after. So I try to maintain his legacy through my own footsteps. But again, he provided that foundation for myself and brother Ron and Don and Victor.
That's amazing. That's amazing, because I would have thought that in my small mind, I would have swore that you was Paul Hill Sr. and maybe your son was Paul Hill Jr. But I'm glad I brought up that simple point, because you educated me on, now I know why you are as brilliant as you are. And now I know why you continue to struggle when many others don't. Now I know why you're dedicated to the cause. Because
another thing I want to add to it, Art, and I'm glad to be here with you and Billy. Thank you for inviting me this evening. But have you ever heard of Moses Hill, my father's brother?
Who?
Moses Hill.
Yes, I have. Yes, I have.
Now,
Not much, but I've heard of him.
Moses Hill is known as Mr. Black Credit Unions. All the credit unions in Cleveland and around the state, and other states too, he was involved in organizing. He was involved in organizing, because my family church was Antioch Baptist Church. I was baptized under the then Dr. Reverend McKinney, and that was very important in my development at Antioch Church. But my Uncle Moses developed the credit union, which is still at Antioch Church. He developed the credit union at Mount Sinai, the Mount Pleasant Credit Union. But he was, he worked at the post office, but he was educated as a bookkeeper or accountant, and he was known as Mr. Black Credit Union of Cleveland, of Ohio, and some of the surrounding states.
Moses Hill, man, what a great education. So, he is. So you're saying that Moses was the founder of the credit unions in Cleveland? people?
Many of the large church credit unions,
Yeah.
he helped organize the credit union based on the model that he developed at Antioch Baptist Church, and that was during the 40s and the 50s. He was also a member of United Way and a number. He was very civically involved, and it's interesting. There's two phone numbers that I remember. One of them is LO 16919. And that was when before we had the digital phone numbers, we had the alphabetical order phone numbers. But that was my Uncle Moses' phone number.
Yeah.
And,
wow.
And I still remember that phone number. It has a lot to do with him being a role model along with my father and my other uncles and my aunt. And the importance of them as far as development and who I am today and who most of us have ended up turning into. It's based on those role models that we had, within our families and with our communities.
DJ Talking John, I'm looking for Paul Hill's son. If he calls,
I just gave him the phone number. He just called me. That's probably him right there.
Okay, all right, okay. Go ahead, Paul. I just want to make sure we had it. Go ahead, Paul. Tell us a little bit more before we bring him.
Yeah, and then my son Fanon, who was going to join us, he's followed in my footsteps. I followed in my father's footsteps.
Yes, sir.
And created some footsteps. Fanon has followed in mine and created his own footsteps. He'll introduce himself. Fanon, are you there?
Yeah, he's there.
Yes, I am.
Go ahead.
Maybe you
I'm
do
here and honored to be on the show.
Okay, maybe do a little introduction of yourself, who you are and where you're at.
Absolutely. Well, absolute pleasure being on the show. Especially very important show. I'm the son of Paul Hill Dickatus and Marquita Hill. And I'm a child and son of East Cleveland, Ohio. One of the most powerful sites that resisted self-determined community in the world. A lot of people would hear that and say, well, what good could possibly come out of these places? And one of the things I prefer is always to acknowledge those who are on the front line and continue to be on the front line in communities such as East Cleveland. And so I want to begin with a dedicated libation and acknowledge an individual by the name of Coach Bruce Coffey Sr., who was an amazing educator in the East Cleveland public school system. And as a child, myself and my peers in East Cleveland, we were trained by Coach Bruce Coffey Sr., and he engaged us in what he called hill work, where we would run up and down hills throughout the city of Cleveland. And one notable hill located at Forest Hill Park earned the nickname Grandpappy Hill for my generation.
Yes.
Coach Coffey would push us to run up and down those hills until we feel as if we didn't have made. And little did we know in East Cleveland, Ohio, we were being prepared, not just for track and field competitions in various cities throughout Northeast Ohio, but Coach Coffey Sr., the East Cleveland champion, was making us unbeatable, not only physically, but mentally. And so the conditioning I received during the formative years continues to live within me in terms of understanding that our struggle is not always the same. It requires a long effort. And so as a son of East Cleveland, I wanted to publicly acknowledge our support in your organization for doing long distance work. Because as a student at First State Elementary School decades ago, I had a classmate who years later faced a grave injustice. February, or during the month of February, where in 1995, on the street in East Cleveland known as Stratford, he was wrongfully arrested and convicted of murder later, along with two other young men. He became known as the East Cleveland Three: Eugene Johnson, Maurice Glover, and my old classmate from First Elementary School, Derek Week. And they spent nearly 20 years in prison until the murder charge against the East Cleveland Three finally dropped. And I still to this day reflect on the terrifying reality that anyone, including myself and my peers who joined the groups on the streets of East Cleveland, could have been similarly wrong. And so it's absolutely critical that although we honor the Innocence Project for the role they played in relationship to the case of the agency for keeping the story of the East Cleveland 3 alive up until they were released, and tirelessly working to remind the public that former prosecutor Carmen Marino faced criticism for withholding evidence that could have exonerated him at trial. And after decades, once again, the murder trial and charges against the East Cleveland 3 were dropped. So in the spirit of liberation and freedom, it's very important to recognize that we are engaged in a long-term race. And those on the front line, such as McKoy and my mother and my father, have been feeding it, nurturing generations such as generation I'm in to continue to work. I will stop right there because it's important to acknowledge those who are on the front line. We hear about what's not happening in East Cleveland. We don't hear the names of those who have been on the front line self-determined of East Cleveland. So I share that foundation, and thank you for having us up tonight.
So listen, you were man, I didn't even know you knew anything about the East Cleveland 3. Man, you're tripping me. Yeah, they were teenagers when they were falsely accused and did that 20 years. You say you were going to Prospect, and those were your friends?
And specifically, one of those individuals, their niece, was my classmate at Prospect Elementary School.
Yeah.
And see, people don't know that East Cleveland is a city that's connected to our family. So I have a brother-in-law, and he dated a young lady who was the sister of a young man I also went to Prospect Elementary School with. So it's a tight-knit community to this day. And we know what's real and we know that's not real. We know what's authentic, we know what's inauthentic. So, yes, Derek Wheat was a classmate, and I keep his name alive in the work I do in Baltimore because we have incidences such that are still happening. So we keep the name of the East Cleveland 3 alive. We keep the name of Art McKoy and Black on Black alive because we need folk on the front line making sure that even after those who have been wrongly accused secure their freedom after collective work and responsibility of the members, many, it could easily happen at any moment. And so I can thank
So
for being in a city
yeah.
that continues
Yes.
to motivate other folk when they think about the self-determination of individuals in the city who are on the front lines fighting for justice and freedom and connecting those freedom struggles at an international level in the spirit of Don Freeman and Mama Norma Freeman as well.
So I've changed my mind about this show. We're not going to continue with your dad. I'm going to continue with you. I'm canceling all of that out. A couple more questions. So you're in Baltimore now, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and so what do you do in Baltimore?
So in Baltimore, my wife and I, who is also from East Cleveland,
Wow.
we knew each other as children. Once again, there are a lot of families in East Cleveland that run deep into the history of East Cleveland. And we reconnected as adults in Baltimore as a result of an elder by the name of Norma Freeman, Don Freeman's wife, who
Lord
made
have
sure that Natasha, my dear wife, knew that I was in Baltimore. See, Baltimore City, we renamed Tubman City because Maryland is also a side of resistance such as East Cleveland. And so we work in communities that have been under the yoke of oppression, facing disinvestment in the same way that our community of East Cleveland has. And we connect families specifically residing in public housing because, as my father shared, our roots run deep per public housing. Bob Marley, Peter Thompson from public housing. Soweto, South Africa. The Soweto 1976 uprising took place in a community with conditions that were similar to public housing. And so we have been able to use arts and culture to remind families of the strengths that reside within them, connecting them to culture, making sure that they know about the East Cleveland 3, to the point that we actually have cross-cultural Baltimore had a challenge. And I thought Baltimore had this freedom fighter. But I had no idea, Baba Fanah, that there are freedom fighters as such in East Cleveland. So we make sure that those exchanges take place, and we build processes integrating African-centered rites of passage where young people understand their role, not only locally but internationally, in continuing freedom struggles, utilizing the tools that many say they do not have. We work within prison settings. And I'm just so inspired by my mother and my father for the work they've done within prison settings, working with populations that have been denigrated, thrown away, not realizing. Many people do not understand that we have so many freedom fighters who need to be back in our communities to contribute. They have the testimony. Many of them have fought against the disease of addiction. And anyone who has fought addiction is someone I want by my side.
I have.
So we do this work collectively, and it all starts with the root, with my grandparents, the great-grandparents, and my father and mother, who still do the work, recognizing the age they are. I try to get them to slow down, but they're ahead of me. I have to keep up with them.
So, son, your dad is kicking me under the table, saying, cut him off, I got a lot to do. Just kidding, but listen, this is 1490 WERE, www.newstalkcleveland.com, streaming live on all social media platforms. It's just an honor for me and Billy to have a great man like Paul Hill in the studio. And thank you, son. I'm going to turn this back over to your dad. He had a lot to talk about, okay? But one day, I'm going to invite you into the studio because I got a lot to talk to you about, okay?
Well, I will be honored, and the invitation is open for you and Black on Black to join us in Baltimore so our young people and families can hear directly from you. Thank you, sir.
Listen, one thing more before I let you go. At Brother Freeman's funeral, you made one of the most dynamic speeches that I have heard in years. One day I want you to come on the program and do that, okay? Whether we have to do it live or by in the air, it doesn't matter. The people need to know that. Thank you so much, brother.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, we're going to have another caller that'll be calling in that we work very closely with.
What's his name?
Washington, D.C., Dr. Atiba Kopic from Washington, D.C., area code 202. Yeah, he'll be calling in, joining me, addressing some things that I want to deal with. Mention was made of, before doing that, I want to just list a number of organizations myself and soulmate Marquita Hill have organized that have been around over the past decade. They're very important, not only East Cleveland, but for the greater Cleveland area. And we both co-founded an organization which is called the National Rites of Passage Network. And Rites of Passage being a human development process to help develop young people into adulthood, not by happenstance, not by social media, but where we as adults within the community take responsibility, for that. And we use the National Rites of Passage Institute to reclaim African traditions of just intergenerational, what some people may know as mentorship, but it's more than mentorship. It's more than the corporate model of mentorship. And to adapt them for contemporary families, schools, and community. At one time, we had a Rites of Passage program called the Journey Project through the East Cleveland Public Schools, because my work and my wife's work in Rites of Passage really started in East Cleveland. It started in East Cleveland at East Cleveland, which used to be the East Cleveland YWCA. We had a program there. And we also had one during the early days within the East Cleveland Public Schools. And also after I retired, we had a program within the East Cleveland Public Schools that was very successful. So National Rites of Passage Institute, a second organization that we founded back in 1984, is the Greater Cleveland Kwanzaa Alliance. And, which served as an anchor of just Kwanzaa celebrations, those 7 principles of Kwanzaa, and that we celebrate in, around internationally, nationally, as well as Northeast Ohio, which we've been doing now for more than 4 decades. And the Great Cleveland Kwanzaa Alliance emphasis on bringing families and artists and educators and elders together to just honor the 7 principles. The principle of Umoja, which is unity. A chain is only as strong as the weakest link. Self-determination, collective work and responsibility, cooperative economic purpose, creativity, and faith. But all those values that are responsible for us being here today, that our ancestors understood, our forebears understood. A third organization that we've developed is, well, not developed, that we're part of, is called the Black Child Journal, which myself and Dr. Atiba Kopi from Washington, D.C., who is a co-editor, I'm now the publisher of that organization. But it focuses on issues as related to not only issues, but successful practices relative to working with African American children to help develop them into adulthood. So those are a few things I just wanted to share with you before talking about. There's a question I want to pose that myself and Dr.
Give me 1 second. Is this the doctor on the phone? On the line, brother? Yeah.
Yeah, that myself and Dr. Atiba Kopi are going to address, and we're going to address this question, which will focus on institutional building, the importance of institutional building, leadership, development, and healing. But the question we want to start off with is the question of how are the children? And how are the children really reflects, and it carries a lot of moral weight. And we got this question, which is, there's a group that I had the opportunity, my wife and I had the opportunity to visit in Kenya, which is in Eastern Africa. And it's where there's a group called the Maasai. The Maasai are great warriors, a great history of not only warriors, but just strong, healthy, authentic people. But they would always ask the question whenever they would come in contact with another member of that family or society, how are the children? And the answer that we look for, that they look for, that we should be looking for, is the answer is that the children are well, because that signals that people are at peace, the elders are respected, leadership is responsible, and systems of life are intact. Anything short of that is when the children are not well, it's hypocrisy. And I would say within the world today, within our country today, within our state today, the children are not well collectively as a group. And that reflects a betrayal of the values of those important values I named earlier, and evidence that leadership has failed. So our goal, myself and Dr. Kopic and others, Art McKoy, Billy Sharp, is to be able, when we're asked that question, how are the children, we want to be able to respond that the children are well. But in order for the children, and when I think of that, and I really get upset every time I think about that 5-year-old girl that was accosted by a 9-year-old and a 10-year-old, and what was done to her, the first thing comes into mind, what the heck is going on? It never ceases to amaze me what we as human beings, what we do to one another, not only as adults, but when we start having children at the age of 9 and 10, the question that comes up relative to the way that they treated that young girl, that young baby, a young baby, is what kind of environment are they coming from? Who are the adults in that community? What has influenced them to take on that type of behavior and those actions? So that's really reflective of the children are not well, and the question is, what has to be done to rectify that? Now, myself, and I'm going to let Dr. Kopic take over in a minute, it has to be, what the heck is going on? Dr. Kopic, would you like to say a few words relative to that?
Before the doctor, thank you for calling in, Doctor. Millions of listeners, so don't get nervous and don't get scared. I'm just kidding you. But if I might just tune in on what Brother Paul Hill has said, because it affected me the same way it affected Paul Hill. I hope I can get through this without tears because it touched me deeply. 9, 10-year-old children charged with attempted murder and rape. The children are not being held in the county juvenile detention center, but they will be summoned to juvenile court. All right. Several youths told investigators that the 10-year-old girl led the victim to the field behind Collingwood Athletic Complex before hitting her in the face with rocks, strangling her, undressing her, and I could go on and on. Most of y'all have heard the rest. But I told Billy last week, Paul, that I have a cross to bear. And that cross is, they say, Art McKoy, you've been doing good work, you've been doing it. I haven't, because my whole sole purpose behind my work was so this wouldn't become intergenerational. So I wanted to stop this, but I haven't, because what has happened is the attitude and the disposition and the pain that adults have been inflicting on one another, particularly black, has spread it to our children. And it hurts me very badly because it shows me that as hard as I've been fighting, my work is not done because of the children. Go ahead with your doctor.
And I feel, before you speak, Dr. Copley, Don and Norma Freeman, they dedicated their lives. They're no longer with us. They've since passed on, Norma first and then Don recently. But one of the poems that Don, that kind of captures this, and it'll be an intro for Dr. Copley to speak, is he always, this was one of his favorite, we are guilty of many errors and many faults, but our worst is abandoning the children, neglecting the fountain of youth. Many of the things we cannot wait, but the children cannot. So again, Dr. Copley, would you like to just, speak on this?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Most of my work is working with adults. I've last plus year with debate passage group from Washington D.C.
Doctor, you're kind of breaking up just a little bit. Come a little closer to us. Yes, sir. Thank you.
One of the things we're trying is to address the board in was making ourselves or to revert to we want to make. So we want to react to have a world view where aware of the ancient history, what the value of African people, they are, who they are, that in fact they are not deep by birth. It's hard and to be able to analyze instruments of war that they're trying to destroy them and destroy others. One of the first institutions that the Black community had, one of the things that with us was a sense of who we were and the importance of others. When you begin to work at work, now people who think that we are humans, we have the freedom, have the honesty or not, but not responsible for other communities. So way we've been taught to feel about
Doctor, you're kind of breaking up just a little bit. And your message is so important and so clear. Continue. Are you on speakerphone?
I think we need to have him hang up and call back. I think it's just a bad connection. Because like every other important word is not coming through.
Continue to talk a little bit more, Doctor. DJ Talking John, we're having a little problem with the audio of our guest. Continue to talk, Doctor. The engineer's in the studio now. Go ahead, so we can pick it out.
I think it's on our end.
Okay. We begin to check as we are at war to recognize humanity, since the purpose in life, are connected to, and our way of being here, you arrived here, that and keep it effort to think that we are kind of students, and even though that a concerted practice, they've always been able to hold on a full course that we are. So now we have other means of dealing with knowledge of life and means that we one that's been taken up by the cell phones and the message that you can get out what they are from people who don't that interest at all production and hassle.
Doctor, I really hate to interrupt you, but it's breaking up so bad we can barely get what you're saying. So if you can do me a favor and hang up and call back, and if you're on a speakerphone, try not to be on the speakerphone and just talk directly into the phone. So do me a favor, hang up and call back.
Go ahead, Paul. Till you call back.
One of the things that's important relative to that we attempt to do and let me just say this, I know you're 80 plus, right?
Yeah, 81. Yes, sir.
I'm getting ready to turn 80.
Okay.
I never thought at this age, my father died at 75, my mother died at 60. I never thought at this age, what we're dealing with now,
I didn't either.
we would be dealing with.
I didn't either.
But again, it's important for us, and I know as long as you have breath, as long as I have breath, as long as Billy have breath, we're going to do what's in the best interest for our community. But again, we don't have that many years left. Hopefully, blessed, we will have a few more.
Yes, sir.
But again, we need some more warriors and soldiers in this battle. I mean, because we're fighting right now a losing battle.
Yes, sir.
Relative to what we see internationally, nationally, statewide, what we're witnessing and experiencing in East Cleveland. None of this is by coincidence at all.
That's right.
And again, we don't have a youth problem in America. We don't have a youth problem in Ohio. We don't have a youth problem in East Cleveland. We have an adult problem.
Speak, brother.
So it has to do with, developing a critical mass of true, authentic, healthy adults that can provide what is necessary for us to be able to respond when we ask the question, how are the children, that the children are well? Because as we said before, the children are not well. As far as human development is concerned, there are basically 4 levels that we have to, as adults, to make sure that are in place, no matter where we live and what type of gathering, place or time. The first one has to do with just physical needs, the needs of food, clothing, and shelter. As basic as that may sound, there's a lot of those needs aren't being satisfied today, especially under this present administration. There's a lot of people that need food. The hunger centers we used to have, we don't have anymore. The type of programs that we have for children that are coming to school hungry aren't there anymore. A lot of this food that it hasn't been distributed is wasting away and spoiling in warehouses because of the type of administration that we have and how insensitive they are to those basic needs. A second human need that's very important for existence is the need of safety. The question is, how many of us feel safe in East Cleveland? How many of us feel safe in Northeast Ohio? How many of us feel safe within the United States? There are a lot of things that are threatening our safety, but and I remember when I was at Kirk Middle School, Heritage Middle School, one of the things I asked the young people there, how many of you feel safe in your family? There was a number of them that didn't even feel safe within their family.
Yes, sir.
But because of certain conditions that existed, they didn't feel safe within the school. They didn't feel safe within the community. So again, that being an issue that we have to resolve as adults through our actions, behavior, and public policy relative to feeling safe and not scared of even our own police that are supposed to be there to protect us.
Yes,
a
sir.
problem that we've had in East Cleveland, not only in East Cleveland, but other places also. So again, that being a problem. And then beyond the need, those basic needs, which we call lower needs, then you're talking about higher needs, and there's another need called the need for just self-esteem, feeling secure and respected. There's a lot of us don't feel secure and respected, you know, which causes a lot of problems relative to the way we treat ourselves and those, you know, those that are, you know, around us. So what we've tried to do, myself and Dr. Coptic and others.
So Rector, let me, can we get Dr. Coptic back in?
Okay.
Talking, John?
Yeah.
All right, there you go.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Much better.
Much better.
Okay. Well, you want to finish what you're saying?
Well, that's kind of a lead into the work that you've been doing in Washington. Is very important as far as what is needed around the country and places. You know, our efforts that we do together, you know, are working and trying to develop healthy young people as well as healthy adults. Maybe you could speak about that relative to what you're doing and what we try to do, have been doing jointly.
Yes, what we have tried to do for the last 30 plus years has been to work on the social development and physical development of black girls and boys. And we call it a rite of passage, and they're normally dealing with adolescents. And we try to, and we actually do, as part of our program for 20 weeks, take them through all kinds of issues as it relates to what it means to be a positive African person of African descent, what our values were, what our values should be, how we should interact with each other, what we should think about ourselves, and then what skills that we need to have and to master in order to be a functioning human being. And so specifically then since I deal with boys, we deal with the issues of how to be a good son, how to be a good brother, how to be a husband, and how to be a father. And that is a path that we want them to follow, and help them understand that the time between being 13, 14, or 15 should be filled with trying to master those skills and connect with their family members, whether they be their parents, their elders, the grandparents, other folks in their families. So we help them fill in the gaps so that they understand what their family history is, what their family heritage is, and have them explore so they can better understand who they are and what they should be about. We also help them address the issues of what are the factors that are against them as young men and how they should respond to them, not only from the large society, but also how they should respond to all kinds of trauma and stress, and be able to recognize what it means to be a positive person, what the behaviors look like, and also to give them information and help them to memorize and relearn
example, if you don't know where you're going, anywhere will take you. Or another one would be, for example, to know nothing is bad, to learn nothing is worse. So what we're doing is giving them information, letting them know that they have. They are. We want to hear what they have to say. We want to hear what they are dealing with, and give them opportunities to learn from the adults who are trying to help them identify the markers of positive development within the society and their family, because these kinds of issues were historically transmitted generationally by the families, by the major institutions, such as the church and the schools, and other institutions. But now we have been overtly told that we are nothing, that our heritage is nothing, that our heritage, any truth that we told, that we
Yeah, and Atiba, let me say this, because what you're saying, especially as related to those young 9-year-old and 10-year-olds, certain things that they were lacking.
Hold your thought, Brother Hill and Brother Coffee. So we're rounding it down to a couple minutes to round this segment down. Go ahead.
Well, hold on. Because we got 2 calls on. Can we get some questions from the listeners, and then because we have to wrap it up.
So here's what we're going to do. This is so important, and the callers are calling in. What we're going to do is we're going to give Brother Coffee the last word. Then we're going to take a short break, and we're going to let him go, and then you're going to finish with your points. You're so important. We're going to hold you over for about 5 or 8 minutes. Okay, after 6. Okay.
Okay.
Go, Brother Coffee. Give your final a closing statement. You got a minute, Doctor.
Okay. The issue for us is helping you understand who they are. They come from greatness, and they're going to be great. There's genius locked within them, and that there are those who are going to help them identify what that genius is. They're going to learn that they have a lot to say, they have a lot to learn, but they can master those things. And that the most important thing is to be a positive, well-functioning African person who values other people, and especially values members of our community, and knows how to treat them, knows how to protect them, and knows how to identify those actors and things that are detrimental to them and their futures.
Thank you, Dr. Coffee. We'll definitely bring you back. We got to go now. Brother Hill's going to stay on the other side of the break. So listeners, don't go nowhere. We'll take a short break, and then we'll come back with Brother Paul Hill to wind it down.
This is a paid program brought to you by Art McKoy. The views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the hosts